Hi, in my last video, someone commented that I should make a video about optics. Shoutouts to this guy. I did cover this quickly in my how to pick attachments video, but I feel like I should cover this more in depth because I do have quite a lot of opinions on optics, and I personally use a large variety of them, and it's also been a while since that other video, and optics stats have changed since then. I'll share my thought process and go through it step by step on how I pick optics, and I'll also give previews on the optics that I use. Big disclaimer though, this isn't gospel. These are just what I use, but always pick what you like and what you want to use. Okay, let's get started. The first thing I consider is what kind of weapon I'm using. I generally divide this into automatics in general, like assault rifles, carbine, PDWs, LMGs, DMRs and semi-autos, shotguns, and sniper rifles. Okay then, I'll start with automatics. Generally, for automatics, I pick Red Dot because it often has a straightforward and unobtrusive reticle with magnifications that are on the lower end, so I could use it in close range and stuff. I split these into 4 categories: low magnification, medium magnification, high magnification, and special use cases. And the criteria I look through when I decide which category I pick from is 1. The playstyle of the weapon, 2. The recoil, because lower magnification makes recoil easier to control, and 3, and this is a completely personal thing, aesthetics. I would just use Russian optics on Russian weapons, and that's kind of the extent of it. Okay, finally, after all of that explanations, we can now actually look at the optics. Yay. Starting off with low magnification, I have the Delta sight. This one is unlocked really early on, and is honestly one of the best low magnification ones, purely because it's super small, doesn't take any space on your screen, and the reticle is really simple, it's a triangle, and the bullet just goes to the tip. The next one I use is the EOTech 552. It's a bit bigger, and it's also unlocked really early on. It's an iconic red dot, you see it everywhere in FPS games and real armed forces as well. I like this one personally because it has a really good reticle, and I really like how the lower notch on the outer ring sort of helps me line up for bullet drop. Let's see. Next one, the mini sight. I don't personally use this often, but it's another very low profile red dot. It's very much like the Delta, and the only really notable difference is that the reticle is a small green circle. Sometimes I use it, but yeah, as I said earlier, I mostly don't use it because I think the green dot is too big, but I can see why people use it. Reflex sight. This one is, again, another small red dot, and I know a lot of people like this one. I use it sometimes as well. I find that it's a little cramped though, it's a bit small, the actual sight window. The optics in general also just feels small. I can appreciate the really simple red dot though. Very good sight clarity. Next one, for low mag, it's the Cobra EKP sight. This is basically the Russian equivalent to the reflex sight. So I sometimes use it on Russian weapons, and it also has less magnification than the reflex sight. I have the same problem with this as I do with the reflex sight, is that it's a little cramped. But I really like the reticle though, and it does also take up a bit of space on the gun. I only really reserve this optic for high recoil Russian automatics, maybe the Saiga 762. That one has a massive amount of recoil, so I use this one. Next one, oh, this one's an old one. It's the Kosaku sight. Previously, used by virtually everyone for some reason. It's been changed a bit. It has some magnification now, but it still has the lowest magnification out of every red dot in the game, not counting the DCL, of course. It comes in at 1 0.25 times. And yeah, the side picture is really clear. It takes up virtually no space on the gun, and it's generally good. But I only reserve it for weapons with really high recoil because I generally want some zoom on my automatics. Speaking of zoom, we'll be moving on to the medium magnifications now. I use this pretty often. And starting off is the Cobra. This one is an iconic Russian sight. It takes up a bit of space on the gun, but this is pretty much one of my favorite red dot optics of all time. Back in 2017, when we didn't have all of these other red dots, I basically run this on every weapon. It was and it's still really good, but I've diversified my tastes since then. These days I only run this on Russian weapons because it fits them. Let's see, next one. This one's also a very iconic one, both in Phantom Forces and in other FPS games. The Coyote sight. It's extremely good. It's not only low profile, but the side picture is also very clear with a simple red dot in the middle. Hell, I would call this the red dot sight to always go for. But I don't run it often, and there's a pretty funny reason for that, which is the Barska Electro. It's literally identical to the Coyote sight, but it just has a different reticle. And I like this one better, so I just run it over the Coyote. It unlocks at 750 kills though, so you could literally just use the Coyote until you get to this point. That's what I did. Or just use the Coyote in general if you don't like the reticle. Let's see. Next one. Oh, very cool one. The OKP7. This one's a Russian optic, a very unique one. It only takes up space on the left side of the gun. And the reticle is also one of my favorites, and overall this is my favorite Russian optic. I run this on every Russian weapon that I have it unlocked on. And yeah, you can see it in my weapon showcases as well. Weapon spotlights, bruh. Yeah, I use it on the SKS and stuff like that. Next up we have the high magnification. I don't run these ones often because they have high kill requirements. And generally some guns just have too much recoil for high magnification. So let's start off with the Pilad. This is another Russian optic. It's kind of small. The reticle is a circle, and the visibility is pretty good. But I don't use this one pretty often because, again, Russian guns often have a bit more recoil than this thing's able to handle. And also because I just like the OKP7 better. The OKP7 looks better than this thing, so I just use that instead. The final one I like to talk about in the high magnification case, well, there's only two here anyway, is the UH Gen 1. You see me run this pretty often in my weapon spotlights, if I have it unlocked, because this is a rank, no, this is a 920 kill unlocked. It's boxy, it takes up space on your gun, it takes up space on your screen. The side picture is alright, the Coyote gets a way better side picture, but this reticle is really cool. I really like this reticle, so I use it often, and for most low recoil guns, this fits really well because it has pretty high zoom. So yeah, but I don't use it on every gun, simply because, as I said earlier, I just don't have it unlocked and I'm not gonna buy it, nah. And finally, we go to the final category for our automatics, which is the special use cases. And all of these optics have some special use to it, or have other stats and mechanics tied to them. The first one is Mars. I personally never use this thing. It's basically just a regular red dot with a laser attached to it. Statistically, it helps with hipfire recovery, but this thing is ugly and it's really big. Plus, I always run a laser on automatics anyway, so this thing just kind of doesn't really help if I just need a visible laser. And hipfire is usually pretty accurate anyway. Next up is the Microdot Mini. This optic is weird. The side picture is cramped, and the blue reticle I think is too big. It's a little obstructive. But you may have noticed that it sort of rises up. And what this ends up happening, right, is because it's a little higher on the gun, you see the muzzle flash less. So you only really use this on guns with massive muzzle flashes that you just can't be bothered to put suppressors or like a flash hider on. I've used this in my M14 spotlight video, because the M14 has a massive muzzle flashes. This was like basically the only red dot I could find to help with that. So yeah, very special use case. Finally, finally we have the DCL 120. This is massive. The side picture is also really clear and it has a circle reticle. And it also has no magnification. It has a 1x magnification. This optic also reduces your max rotational kick, so on paper, this sounds like a very good optic for very high recoil automatics. But no, it completely wrecks your equip speed, your aim speed, and your aim walk speed, so it's not worth using most of the time. For me, I only use this as like a last resort nuclear option in case I have no other ways of reducing recoil on a gun. And yeah, that's all for automatics. I should also comment though that I don't use big scopes for automatic weapons, since from personal experience, red dots like have plenty of magnification and they just always works and you get short close range effectiveness out of it. And yeah, red dots generally just work better on automatics unless you're using some weird zero recoil conversion, like a .22 long rifle conversion on maybe the AUG H-bar or the Uzi. So yeah, now we can move on to DMRs and other semi-autos. My criteria for DMRs and the semi-autos is still the same as automatics, but for these kinds of weapons, I only divide the category into medium optics, medium red dot optics or higher, and just scopes in general. So I'll quickly go over the red dots since I already talked about it already, and it's basically the same one I talked about on automatics. I usually run red dot on smaller maps or if guns have a lot of recoil. Mostly if I have it unlocked, I will use the I will use the UH1 sight because it's got good optics. I like the reticle. On Russian guns, I run the OKP and sometimes the Cobra, depending on how much recoil it has. Oh yeah, and for guns in general, I also just sometimes back up to Barska Electro if it has high recoil. So that's the red dots. Now, okay, for scopes, I only really use one of 3 scopes, which are the C79, the ACOG, and the PKAS. So I'll start with the C79. The C79 is it's the first scope you can unlock if you don't count weapons that come with their own scope. Now, despite being the first one you unlock, it is an extremely useful scope. It has a 4.25 times magnification by default, which is plenty, but you can also switch to a backup iron sight, which is extremely useful on DMRs and semi-automatics, as you can be rushed by automatics pretty easily considering that you kind of operate within their range as well. Being able to switch to fight at close to medium range really quickly is just a godsend. Let's see, the other scope I use is the ACOG, and you may have seen this on some of my other videos. It's an iconic scope, seen in many games, and is used often in real life. The ACOG provides a pretty good 4 times magnification, and I usually pick the C79 over this. However, the ACOG is better, in my opinion, for weapons that you have to stick to the backlines, like the Scar SSR or the Gyrojet Carbine. And I also just prefer the ACOG's reticle over the C79 when I'm really fighting at long ranges. So yeah, that's about it. Finally, we have the PKAS, and this is this is technically a red dot sight, but it's got very high magnification in terms of red dot standards. It's a 3 times magnification. And it's also big and tubular, so I just kind of grouped it up with the the scopes. Simply put, I just use this on Russian DMRs and semi-autos because it's Russian and there's not really much more to it. The side picture is okay, though it does take a bit of your screen, but I really like it. Moving on to shotguns, this will be really quick. Yeah, generally it depends on what type of shotgun I use. Like, let's see, semi-automatics and like automatic shotguns, I just put an AMT on it and just go for a full hipfire build, because like semi-automatic shotguns are pretty good at that. And I also use the AMT on the KSG since it has a high like fire rate. The other pump actions like the 870, the KS23, and the pump spaz, I all use like a medium to like maybe even high magnification red dot because it complements their range kind of well. And also for all of them, I switch to high magnification red dot if I decide to use slugs on them, and that includes this entire list, except maybe the 2 double barrel shotguns. I don't use any optics on them because I think it looks ugly, so I just keep it stock. Yeah, that's it for shotguns. So move on to like sniper rifles now. Finally, for most sniper rifles, I just use the ACOG. Like as I said earlier, I really like the ACOG's reticle for long range, and to be honest, 4 times magnification is enough for most sniper rifles, plus you don't have to deal with black scope mechanics. And on big anti-material rifles like maybe the Hecate, like the M107, or the NTW, I just use like the default scope because it's highly recommended for these specific weapons that you stay way in the back lines anyway, and you can one-hit people anyway back there. So I do need a bit more magnification. World War era rifles like the M1903, I just keep it on the stock iron sights because I think that looks better. Okay, yeah, alright, I think that's everything. No, hold on. For pistols, I just use the Delta, and yeah, that should be everything. But as a final note, before I end this video, what is actually like my favorite optic, my #1 optic? Boy, let me tell you.